On today's episode, we are going to be doing some DIY IKEA hacks with a little bit of a twist. We are going to pick out some Pottery Barn items and see if we can't recreate those using IKEA finds. So the first thing we're going to do is go to the computer and see if we can't select some items.
Come pick me up 'cause I just wanna see the light. I wanna be weightless. Teach me to fly, I won't be coming down. Could somebody wake me?
Okay, so with our items ordered, they're ready to be picked up. So let's head to IKEA and see just how easy it is.
I just see her face wherever I look.
So I'm here, and I've never done an online order pickup here at IKEA before, so let's see how it goes.
Want to, but I'm gonna try when she left me. Yeah, let a little bit in.
So this is a little bit of a different experience for me. I don't even need to go into the store. I'm literally sitting in a parking spot. I texted them. They're gonna bring my order out. I don't know how I feel about this. It's gonna save me so much time, but I kind of like looking around as well, so we'll see. Let's just sit here and, I don't know, contemplate life. They just brought it out to me. Super easy, ready for me to put in my car. Okay, so I realized after picking my stuff up that I left a couple things off that I wanted to get, so I ran in really quick and grabbed them. I'll wait to show you what they are in a little bit, but huge cost savings on this episode. I'm done for real now, so let's head back to my studio and do these DIY IKEA hacks. That was super easy. It saved me a ton of time. Sometimes you want to go shop around, but every once in a while you just want to get in and out. That is absolutely the way to go. So now it's time to get into our IKEA hacks. But first, I have to address the big elephant in the room. On my last IKEA episode, I had an embarrassing moment. Oh my word. So on one of my steps in one of my easy DIY IKEA hacks, we made like a little whiteboard. Well, in one of my steps, I said you needed to remove the little writing on the plastic with rubbing alcohol. And what I did not realize, and a lot of you helped me out with, is that there is a plastic film over the glass. This was so embarrassing. So instead of rubbing off like all of that black stuff, all we needed to do is remove the protective film. Oh my goodness, how embarrassing is that? That is so funny. Y'all still love me, right? So for our first IKEA hack this episode, we are going to be knocking off the Cameron Globe light fixture. This was about $150, and I thought we could do it for less. And then I found, and please pardon me as I slaughter and embarrass my Scandinavian heritage, the Frihult light fixture at IKEA, and the price difference was tremendous to begin with. I think it was around $26, and to flip this, it is going to be super easy. So they do have the Frihult in a brass originally. So if you can find that, that will cut out a step and make your life so much easier. I couldn't find it, so I ended up having to start out by spray painting the section that we needed gold, and that was pretty easy to do. And I already had the paint on hand, used hardly any paint, and I just sprayed that section. But if you can find the brass one to begin with, you can forgo that step altogether and just go to the next step, which is where we tape off what we don't want painted, that we want to leave gold, and like just protect everything the best we can. And then we spray paint the next section in a flat black spray paint. And I really like the Krylon Fusion paint line. If I can find it, I typically buy that one because it tends to do a much better job. And then once that's dry, I wanted to switch out the globe part because the one that comes with the IKEA one is very heavily frosted glass. You won't see anything. And kind of the cool part of this light fixture was that it was clear and you could see the light bulb. So I picked up a globe one from Lowe's that was about $8. This one was clear, but it did have a seated glass. Now our inspiration one was not seated from what I could tell online. It was just a clear glass, but actually the seated one one is going to work a little bit better in my case because I'm going to also be replacing a light fixture in the entryway coming up here very shortly, and the one that I'm going to be putting in there is going to also have seated glass, so it's actually going to kind of tie it very nicely together. Then I wanted to go ahead and install it. Now, I'm not a licensed electrician, so I'm not going to give a tutorial on that, but I'm comfortable doing this a lot of times, and sometimes I will go ahead and hire it out. And when I tell you what the cost savings are here, you could go ahead and hire out the electrician and it will cover that cost from buying the original one. So I uninstalled the old light fixture, but when I removed it, this is what I saw. I don't know what they did up here, but there is a obvious change in texture. So like the only solution that I can really see is getting like a little medallion for like right around there to kind of disguise that, other than having to do a whole bunch of drywall repair, which I don't feel like doing. So I headed to Lowe's to get a small ceiling medallion. Now I'm gonna have to probably replicate this look in the entryway since they're kind of right there, but this really did mask that ugly ring and I didn't have to do any drywall repair and it looked fine. So this was a good little hack and solution for that issue. So I finished installing our light fixture. I put in a similar light bulb, that kind of candlestick kind of one. I always really like the daylight light just because it's a fresh, bright, clean light and not like a yellowy light, especially in that hallway where it's going to be at. That daylight light will be fantastic. And then I just pushed our new globe light into place. It's very lightweight and it does kind of cinch it into place. When you look at actually how we did the hack, it was extremely easy. Spray paint and a new globe and call it a day, and you have a near identical match. I mean, there's a few subtle changes, but if you didn't know any better, you would think that this IKEA light fixture was absolutely from Pottery Barn. And guess what? The Pottery Barn version was $150 without tax, shipping, or anything, and our version came in at $35. That is massive savings, but I just think this is super easy to just get an almost identical look. I just really like how this turned out. For our next IKEA hack, we are going to be knocking off the MALCOM C table from Pottery Barn. It was $400, and I found something that looked very similar. Now, the direction it went was a little bit different, but like the overall look of it was near identical. We are going to be using the, and I'm sorry to my Scandinavian friends, FIXTURE little end table. The first thing that we did is assemble it. It was honestly one of the easiest assembly jobs I've had to do from IKEA. It went together very easily and it was pretty straightforward, at least for that part. And it did come with a piece of glass, but we are going to hang on to that for something in the future. We don't need it for this one. Then we needed to get a little bit powerful because we are going to build the tabletop. It was just a little too wide to go out and get something like a 2x12 or something like that. And to kind of mimic the top, we needed to kind of piece something together anyways. So I picked up a 2x4. One 2x4 will get the job done, which is pretty inexpensive. We're gonna try to replicate that top. So we are gonna cut this down to fit our piece. Let's get cutting. We measured 2 exterior pieces and I believe they were around 22 inches. You're gonna wanna make sure you take your own measurements, but I believe that's where they were at. And then we cut 2 at about 15 inches for the center and then 2 more that were about 7 inches for the end pieces that are in the in-between. Then we had all of these little individual pieces and we needed to kind of assemble them into one solid piece. So the way we're going to attach all these pieces is by doing some pocket holes with a Craig jig. There's tutorials on how to use a pocket hole jig. I'm still kind of new to it, but we're going to give this a go and I think it will be a great way to attach all these pieces. We just stick that in here. We've got this clamped down into place and we're going to start going. Our pocket holes are going to go in this way, and then I think I'm going to do some that go in this way so you can see kind of what we're doing. Even though like all of the pieces were like joined together, I wanted to add a couple of extra ones in here and there to just add to the overall stability of the piece and kind of tighten it up as much as we possibly could. So I threw in a couple of additional pocket holes. There are other ways, but this one was a really good option and much quicker, and it will create some strength. With all of our pocket holes ready to go, I started assembling everything, and I took some wood glue to kind of just add more stability once again. And then you take these screws and a pocket hole like screw top. They're like special pocket hole screws and a drill bit that help you drive those into the wood. It sends the screws in on an angle and really does create a lot of strength. And so I just went screw by screw and assembled our tabletop. Then it was done, and I was like, oh, awesome. But the thing with 2x4s, and this was kind of a bummer deal, is there is a little curve edge on these. If you can find the most square 2x4s you can, that is a really good way to go, because these ones ended up being pretty rounded, and I wanted to fill in the gaps kind of similar to our Pottery Barn one. The first thing I did is I started sanding it down to see. I used a very aggressive sandpaper with a low grit, like a 60 grit, and I was just trying to sand it down as smooth as I could. A band saw would be really good, but you know, even with all of the tools that I have, I don't have everything. And I was doing the best that I could with the palm sander to kind of try to knock down the rounded edge and try to get it a little bit more flush. It just wasn't working. So what I ended up doing is creating a DIY wood filler that I pushed into the cracks and let dry, and then I ended up having to do like a second one because as it dries it kind of sinks down, and so I ended up doing 2 layers of a wood filler. You don't have to do a DIY one. It's just really inexpensive and cheap because you can use the sawdust and some glue and call it a day, but you can just buy some wood filler and fill in those cracks really well. And then you go in and you sand it all down really well with a heavy grit, and then you eventually go up to a higher grit sandpaper. I ended with a 220. It did still have like a rustic feel to it, which is fine because the Inspiration one also has kind of a rustic flair to it. And when I was sanding, I kind of rounded out the corners and got everything smooth and looking good. And then once I was happy with the sanding job and it looked really good and ready to go, I ended up using a antiquing glaze. And the reason I do this is because I found that that mimics very closely the color of the Pottery Barn pieces. I've used it on like a Pottery Barn ladder. It matched up really nicely on that. It's just the Waverly antiquing wax, but the Folk Art one, they're owned by the same company. They're very similar. So either one of those antiquing waxes would be good. I like it because it's very good on the color, but it also dries very quickly, and then we could go about sealing it. So I used a Watco clear coat in a satin finish, and I just sprayed that on. What I like about it is it's non-yellowing and it dries to the touch in about 30 minutes. Now we had this base that we built, the IKEA piece, and we built this top, and now we need to put them together. This is where I had a little bit of heartburn because I didn't know if what I wanted to do would work, but I was just gonna try it. So the metal that held the glass, you had these little metal tabs, and I thought that that would be a perfect way to attach our top to it, but there were no holes, see, because it was just supposed to hold a piece of glass. So my idea was to drill some holes into this metal, but it was actually kind of thick metal, and I wasn't sure that it was gonna do it. But I'm like, you know what, we're just gonna give it a go. So I flipped it over and I put a piece of wood underneath it, so it had some pressure on the underside, but also something to drill into so we didn't damage anything. What you need to do here is just kind of very carefully place your drill bit into the center of your metal piece. Then you start out slow, just kind of working a little tiny hole. As you start to see a little bit of those metal shavings, give it a little bit more juice, and then by the end you can give it full juice and give it a little bit of pressure, a little bit of weight behind it, and drill through those holes. So there should be 6 of those tabs. You drill 6 holes in it, and it actually worked, and I was so relieved because I'm like, I don't really want to use liquid nails because that's just kind of like a janky way to put it together, and I want this to be kind of like a nice quality piece. Then I just flipped our dried top upside down, drove in some screws into the bottom, flipped it over, and we had a very close knockoff of this Pottery Barn version. Okay, remember their version was $400 without tax or fees or anything. Our version was just $40. That's 10% of the cost. I like ours. It's a little rustic, but so is Pottery Barn's. I think this, it doesn't really match in this room, but I just kind of wanted to demonstrate what it looked like and all of that. I don't know if I'm going to keep this piece or what I'm going to do with it, but I just wanted to show you that you could take a piece of furniture and really transition it. I know this is possible to do for Pottery Barn because I've seen a lot of mimicking and a lot of similar pieces from IKEA of Pottery Barn. So if you look around, you can find those. I don't know if they're like intentionally kind of getting the style of Pottery Barn or what, but there are pieces that you can get that Pottery Barn look for a fraction of the cost, and that is awesome. For my next Pottery Barn knockoff slash IKEA hack, so we're kind of morphing those things together today, were these white ledge shelves. Now they actually have a lot of similar colors, so you don't have to do it in the white. There's a lot of wood options that match up with the original ones, and it is so much cheaper. I don't even know if I can really call this a hack. It literally looks just like the original. So the white for white, they were about the same size. I just bought them. And then all we needed to do is install them. You need to have some drywall anchors with the matching screws. It actually doesn't come with them, and the directions just show you screwing them directly in the wall. Well, that won't be nearly sturdy enough unless you have studs on both sides. So you just want to make sure you know how to do a drywall anchor and make sure you get them on each joint. So you use a level, kind of make sure they're level, mark where the holes are, pre-drill for those drywall anchors, then you just tap them into place, and then once they're in place you can just screw those screws through the front of the shelf, and then you have a very sturdy shelf. This is the only part that was a little janky. To cover those screw holes on your shelves, IKEA provides stickers, and I was like, yeah, this is janky, but I went ahead and used them, and it really does disappear. You don't notice them once you cover up the screw head with those stickers. My only beef with that is like if I need to remove the shelves to paint, or if I move and put them somewhere else, am I gonna have to find a new white sticker? I mean, I guess you can find that. I'm sure Pottery Barns does not use a sticker to hide the screws. But when you look at the cost savings of $40 versus $240, yeah, I'm okay with a white sticker. It totally disappears, you don't notice, and the shelves look so amazing. Now you can see this in my bathroom, decorated and kind of cute, but I'm gonna be honest and real with you. As much as I would like to leave it like this, we actually need the additional storage in our bathroom. So all of this is gonna go, and all of my hair products and jams and jellies and goops and, you know, supplements and all of that are probably gonna go on these shelves. It's gonna be function over form this time. If you want those nice kind of ledge shelves from Pottery Barn, I would totally recommend the IKEA ones. They are such a good dupe, and literally you don't have to do anything other than hang them up. Okay, so for my next couple of IKEA hacks, they're both gonna be topiaries, but I'm first gonna start out with this one. It was $480. You heard that right. $480. No way. I don't have words. That's really expensive for one little green topiary plant. If you want to do this next hack, I would recommend running to IKEA. They are kind of, I think, phasing out their topiary balls in the FIXTURE, and they were $26, and it's a pretty large topiary ball. Now, if you don't live near an IKEA or they're out at your store, I see these regular at Home Goods, at Ross, so keep your eyes peeled. You can usually find these balls. They're not really difficult to find, and you do want to find them at a place like that because they might even actually be less money than even IKEA. $26 for a round ball is kind of pricey in my opinion, but when you compare, it doesn't even compare. Now to assemble this, it was actually really simple. So the first thing that I did was take a toilet plunger stick, yeah, from a Dollar Tree plunger, just the stick portion, discard the plunger portion. And I took my drill and I drilled 2 holes in a kind of opposing direction. So drill hole this way, drill, so it's like a plus sign in the top. I did that kind of in the grooves where you turn it in. You could use a wood dowel for this. You could go out to your yard and grab a branch, which is kind of similar to what they had, like a thick branch, and just cut that off. Use what you have. Once I had these holes drilled into the top, I went ahead and used that same antiquing glaze and put that on the whole thing, minus the ends because you're not going to really see those. So I just kind of did it on the vast majority of this stick and I wiped it down. What's really cool about the Dollar Tree plunger is it has these little knots in it, and so it really kind of looks like a trunk or something like that. So very easy. Then I had this black pot already on hand from a past project. I don't remember which one it was, but it started out as a terracotta pot that cost me $2 or $3. It was very inexpensive, and I painted it out in a black chalk paint. Then I took one of the moss sheets that I can get at the $1.25 tree. I bought it when it was still $1, and I cut out a round circle. Like, it doesn't even need to be perfect. It's pretty forgiving. And once I had it about the right size in the center, I kind of clipped out like a plus sign. You'll see why I need that plus sign in just a second. But then I took a piece of floral foam from the $1.25 tree, shoved that down into the base of our pot, then put our moss down over the top of it. You can glue this all down if you'd like. I didn't. Then we took our toilet bowl plunger stick thing and we threaded through a couple of pieces of wire, and I kind of tied each piece onto that and then twisted it together. And you'll see what we're going to do with that in just a second. But then I found a hole big enough to kind of shove our plunger stick through, and then we shoved it all the way till it touched the inside of the top of the ball. Okay, so this is going to look short, but this is going to work out for what we're trying to match up. Then we kind of make sure that our ball is centered up appropriately, and then we pull those wires through, and then you kind of, there's a lot of little plastic pieces in these topiary balls, and then you kind of wrap it around one of those plastic pieces and twist it together. Then you can cut off the excess of the wire and then tuck the remaining portion back down inside the topiary ball, and then you've got your like little lollipop. Then we take our topiary ball and then we're gonna shove it right down into the center of our base, and then the plus sign is important because you just shove it through that and it will give it a nice snug fit around the wood piece. And that's it. Really easy. You could definitely get this done in under like 5 minutes. It's a super easy DIY. Even with our kind of expensive Fega ball, that big one, we're in this to maybe like $32-ish, and that is just, I mean, you saved $450 and it took you about 5 minutes to put together. So I don't know about you, but 5 minutes of my time is worth $450 savings. And it looks so good. I personally don't think that there is really any difference between the inspiration one and this one. Nobody's gonna know whether it was from Pottery Barn or from an IKEA hack that you put together, and that is awesome. And you have the look of a $480 topiary for barely over 30 bucks. So that is a huge win. Okay, that last topiary was easy. Our next topiary could be even easier, believe it or not. So I found this one on Pottery Barn for $200, and then I picked this topiary up at IKEA for $26. Now, I think as it is, doing nothing to it, it's a pretty good dupe. You could just leave it alone, and honestly, that's what I would do. But the inspiration one did have olives on it, so I went ahead and picked up a couple of stems at Hobby Lobby, and I just kind of glued them in and kind of just placed them in to just show what it might look like if you wanted that olive look. Now you could actually build one from scratch. I've seen a lot of tutorials out there where you just take a stick and drill holes in it and glue it in. It's very similar to the cherry blossom one that I did a couple of episodes back. So you could even get this look of this Pottery Barn one for even cheaper. We started with this one, we added in some of the olives. Looks pretty good, right? So $26 to $30 versus $200. I love those savings. It's so easy. The hardest one was maybe the end table, and really that is a doable beginner project as well. I promise you it is not as complicated as you think, and there is even a way to kind of simplify that down by just getting a solid piece of wood and just trimming it out and making it even easier. But honestly, I think we did pretty good matching our Pottery Barn inspirations. All said and done, I saved over $1,000. Honestly, we could feel proud of ourselves because we did it ourselves and we got the same look for way less. I love it. All right, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If so, here's another one that I think you'll like as well. And if you haven't done so already, consider hitting that subscribe button right here. It's super easy to do, and I would love it if you joined the DIY Niner family. And to all of my DIY Niners, I just want to remind you once again that you are more powerful than you know. We'll see you next time. Bye.